Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Cat Chat Live. My name is Nancy Stevens and I serve as UK's Parent and Family Communications Manager. I hope you've been able to join us for several of our Cat Chat Live webinars so far. They have been going really well. We've had some great presentations and I trust that our viewers have learned a lot from them. We've got another great one coming up today with a variety of offices who are here to tell you more about financing UK and financing life. So I'll turn things over to them in just a moment. But before that, I've got a couple of housekeeping items for you, starting with some reminders about Zoom webinar. As a reminder, we can't see or hear you, so we'll be using the Zoom Q&A feature to communicate with you and for you to share your questions with us. We'll get to all of the questions after the presenters have shared their slides, so be thinking about your questions. Use that Zoom Q&A feature to communicate with us. We'll plan on taking no more than an hour together today, and we'll hopefully get to all of your questions in that time. But if for some reason we don't have time for your question, or we need to address your question offline, especially when we're talking about money, those things tend to be personal and private. So if there's a situation that might be best served by one-on-one communication with one of the offices you're about to hear from, we'll make sure that you leave here with their contact information. This webinar is being recorded, so if you join us late or aren't able to stay the whole time, you'll be able to see the full recording later today in our Cat Chat family community, and you'll also get a link to the recording via email in the next couple of days. You can always reach out to parents at uky.edu anytime you need assistance connecting with any of our presenters today or related to anything about UK in general. And finally, you will get a survey after today's webinar, and we do hope you'll take a couple of minutes and give us your feedback on how today's Cat Chat Live and the whole Cat Chat Live series have met your needs and what remaining questions you still have. We hope you'll make plans to join us for the additional Cat Chat Lives that we have planned in the next few weeks. We have a series next week focusing on life in the residence halls and also on managing conflict in campus relationships, be they roommates or friends. We're going to hear some great presentations there. We're adding a couple of last topics as we wrap up our Cat Chat Live series. So the Wednesday, August 14th offering from UK Police is a new addition. And then we've got one coming up on Wednesday the 7th that we're putting the final touches on, and we'll be sharing all of those details and registration links for any of these in our Cat Chat family community. I feel like I have shared this in every Cat Chat Live webinar and at orientation, so you may be tired of hearing me talk about it, but the Cat Chat family community is my baby, so I'm going to mention it every single time. It's our parent and family communications platform here at UK, and we hope you're taking full advantage of all of the resources and the information in it. You can see some of those things on the screen. It's also where you'll register for the university's Family Weekend celebration coming up in September. I know I've shared information on this about or at the previous Cat Chat Live webinars, but want to make sure I put in a plug for all of the fun things that will be happening September 20th through the 22nd. Check the Family Weekend website and the Cat Chat family community for more information. So to get us to our presenters today, I wanted to quickly run through those announcements. So I'm going to turn things over first to student financial aid and scholarships, and then after that, you'll hear from Student Account Services, and we'll wrap things up with the Student Financial Wellness Center before we take your questions. So appreciate all of our presenters being here today, as well as our viewers for joining us. But Tiffany, I'll let you take it from here. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Nancy. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Tiffany Jackson. I'm the Director for Counseling, Processing, Outreach here in the Office of Student Financial Aid and Scholarships at UK. What I'm going to go over today are just a couple of quick hit items that I think would be important for you to know, just kind of where we are at the beginning of a term. Also just give you some resources of where you can even self-navigate a couple of questions that you might have, and also how to get in touch with us. I know that anytime you have financial aid questions, especially for this FAFSA information and this FAFSA year, it's been a lot. And so we are doing our best to make sure that you get the answers and information that you need in a timely manner. And we certainly appreciate the patience and understanding as we all navigate this time of year. So without further ado, let's get started. If you are a continuing student, family, or parent, you may have recognized in looking at the website that we've gone through a huge change. So our website has done kind of a rebuild, and it is a lot more user friendly than it has been in the past. So I would encourage you to refamiliarize yourself with our website. There are several answers to questions that you might find here, and also just information and direction to forms that you might need. So I always want to plug the financial aid website, especially in its newest edition, before we get started. First and foremost, for us at UK, while the FAFSA itself is not a requirement, it is certainly something that is the first thing that a counselor would advocate a family do or a student complete if they're looking for additional financial aid options. As I said, this 24-25 FAFSA rollout has been anything but clean from the Department of Education, and that's been nationally recognized. But it also means that institutions are very slowly getting access to certain pieces and parts of that information. So if you have not already and are interested in additional financial aid options, it is always a good idea to at least complete a FAFSA for that freshman year. And if nothing else, to identify what you're eligible to receive, and then you can make determinations on whether or not you want to do that. So the FAFSA is something that we would always encourage someone to do at least once while they're a student. The next part of that is if you have completed a FAFSA and intend to or are eligible to complete one, the next step for us after we get to a point of actually being able to process and package financial aid is for you to be able to see that. The student does receive emails from us when they have received a financial aid notification. Internally, we call that a FAN. So if you have ever heard a counselor accidentally forget that that acronym is something you may not be aware of, we are not talking about how hot it may be in our seat. It actually is something that we call a FAN internally, and we're not trying to blow wind in our hair as we talk to you about it. But if nothing else, you should be able to see in your My UK portal, the student can log in and identify what their financial aid offer looks like. And this is just kind of a quick walkthrough of how you would look at that, how you could review and accept or decline any of those aid pieces, and then submit that to us. The one thing I will say from this component is that if you initially declined, for example, a federal student loan, and then recognized later that that's something that you might actually need to take and would like to see that reoffered to you, that is not something that a student can currently do on the financial aid portal, on the My UK financial aid section of the portal. We are looking to get that changed, but I want to let you all know that that is not currently something you can do. So if a student had previously declined a federal loan and would like for it to be reoffered, that is a quick email to their aid counselor, and we'll get to the point of having to navigate how to find that. But an email to the aid counselor saying, I initially declined this, I would like all of the loans that I was initially offered reoffered. I would like a certain amount of those loans reoffered. You can decide. But that is something I want to bring your attention to as where we are in the academic component of getting started. Our next step is the burning question. What do we owe UK? I know that my colleagues in Student Account Services, who you will hear from shortly, are getting this question quite a bit this time of year. Our office is certainly getting this quite a bit this time of year. This can be really tricky. And the answer is because once you have come for a BBNO, that registration and orientation process, when you registered for classes, what that did is allow our system behind the scenes to identify, here are the courses that you're in, here are the fees that are associated with those courses, if there are any. For example, if you take a biology lab and there is a lab fee associated with that. And so between that time where orientations ended and when those bills generate from our colleagues, there's a lot of back end work that goes into creating and generating that statement. And so what we always in financial aid like to remind folks of is that what you owe UK is going to be tied to what you registered for and how many hours you're taking in terms of being full-time or part-time and those types of things. The other part of that is it's not going to include things that UK isn't going to charge you for. For example, we get a lot of questions about, I'm living off campus. How do I make sure I have enough financial aid to cover my tuition and fee costs and then also rent? And so it is certainly something that becomes a little bit more of an adult conversation than someone may be used to having as a freshman moving in. And so it's a conversation where we talk about, these are what your direct university build costs are. And here's the financial aid you're receiving. So this is what your bill, when it generates from student account services, is going to include. But that may not include things like books that you're going to have to purchase, or rent, or other types of living expenses. And so it's important to know and disseminate the difference between, or differentiate the difference between, what a cost of attendance budget is and what your statement in terms of what you owe UK is. And I can get into the weeds more about that later, certainly if people have questions about that, but there is a difference. So if you're someone who is looking at next steps of borrowing loans, for example, if you are a parent wanting to do a Parent Plus loan from the federal government, and we'll talk about how to do that here in a second, there is a limit to how much we can certify that you can borrow, but that doesn't have anything to do with what you owe UK on that statement. It has everything to do with what that cost of attendance for that student is. And if you have more questions about that, I'll let the Q&A get that, Nancy, but we'll dive in if we need to. Okay, here are additional funding options that we were talking about. So the first thing is always going to come from the Department of Education that we list. We're going to list all those federal options first. That's nationally what financial aid professionals will do. You're going to see that. And so that first option in terms of, okay, here's all the aid my student has received. Here's what we're anticipating our costs really being for the academic year or even the semester, depending on how you want to look at it. What do I do? How do I bridge that gap? What are the next steps? That's the burning question we're getting daily. And so the answers are on this slide. The first thing is, beyond any outside scholarships that they may qualify for, things like Scholarship Universe that we have confirmed with a lot of students have created a profile and attempted to apply for scholarships. The next steps are going to be loan options. And nobody likes that 4-letter word, but it's the reality sometimes of affording the education. I'm a first generation college student. And so not only did I have to take my federal student loans, but my parents had to decide how much of a Parent Plus loan they were going to be able to borrow. And so this becomes a family conversation about what that looks like. But that Parent Plus loan is a federally backed loan. It's credit determined by the Department of Education. So we'll get to that link. It's on studentaid.gov right there. And that's an application that a parent of an undergraduate student applies and does. That credit determination, like I said, is done by the Department of Education. And as soon as that application is submitted, then the institution that you have selected gets that information. So no one has access to that information unless you have designated them as an institution that should receive it and see it, just so that you all are fully aware about that transparency. The other option is something if a parent says, hey, this is great that you're going to college, that you're in, that this is your dream, that this is amazing. But we don't have the ability to take on a federal Parent Plus loan. That's not something that we can do. So some scenarios are that a private or alternative loan is the option. This is also the option if a student is an independent student. And then they're by default of either their age or the fact that they're an independent student on the FAFSA, then there isn't the option for a Parent Plus loan to be borrowed. So the alternative loan is synonymous with a private loan. Those two things mean the exact same thing. And typically, depending on that definition, you can know how long someone's been in financial aid, whether or not they use alternative or private loan as the thing they talk about. We on our website under the loan section have a fantastic comparison tool. So you have the ability to compare several private loan lenders and look at their interest rates, look at those terms. And from that comparison tool and that chart, you can actually go out to that servicer's website directly and do the application. So something to keep in mind that if you're really trying to navigate this for the first time, using that comparison tool is a huge first step. So just wanted to recognize that that is available to you. And then the last thing, because we use this slide in almost every one of our presentations, I don't want to steal the thunder of my student account colleague, because I'm sure that he's going to address this too, but that payment plan is certainly an option. So our counselors will all tell you that it can be one or none of these things, it can be a combination of these additional funding options. You can both have a Parent Plus loan for a certain amount, a set amount, and also a private education loan that's in the student's name. That's a credit determination, and those students are 90% of the time going to have a cosigner. So it is possible to combine these payment options as the next step if you don't want to do all or nothing. And then this is the piece that I will soapbox until September for any student or family that will listen. And that is, if you have accepted your federal student loans on your financial aid offer, you are required to do a master promissory note and loan entrance counseling. And if you are a continuing student and you have borrowed previously, you don't have to do these. They are good for 10 years at the institution that you're enrolled once you do one. And so if you, however, I will say and acknowledge, if you are transferring to UK this fall and you had previously done a master promissory note or entrance counseling at another institution, you will need to do one for the University of Kentucky. When you complete that master promissory note or entrance counseling, you identify which institution you are attending and who should get that information. And so you have to have a valid and active master promissory note and entrance counseling for the institution that you're enrolled in. So just wanted to level set that. But you will receive, and as family members chiming into this webinar, you should know that bi-weekly, so twice a month, since once a federal loan is accepted on the MyUK portal, if our system recognizes that we do not have a valid master promissory note or entrance counseling for that student, it sends an email automatically to the student every 2 weeks. Hey, you've accepted this, but you've not done these two pieces. And they will not generate, they won't disperse from the Department of Education until these pieces are done. So that is my soapbox plea. If you remember nothing else, remember that part of today. And then this we get quite a bit. So when will UK receive all the money from my financial aid offer? And the answer is, we'll get it in pieces, depending on where that funding is coming from. If it's an institutional scholarship or grant, it automatically credits that billing statement once we start to post those to the student accounts. If it's coming from the state, then we are waiting for information from KIA to receive that big bulk file into our account. And then student account services, we work very closely with them to process aid in batches as we get that funding. If it's coming from the federal government, the Pell Grant, the direct loans, Pell Grants are tied to that FAFSA information and don't require additional components for you to do. So those typically come in much sooner than a federal direct loan because it has to go through the checks of whether or not you've done that master promissory note and entrance counseling. So my point is that when that billing statement is due at the end of August, 99% of the things that we are aware of that are coming into the account will be visible as estimates and crediting from that statement to make sure that you have an actualized, here's what I owe on your statement of account when it's due at the end of August. So we do our best to make sure that that is clean and that student account services and our team work closely together to get it correct for you. But you will see pieces and parts come in and out. And lastly, so that I can wrap up and pass the baton, as we will hear in our Olympic future say, this is just how to get in touch with our team. We do our best to accommodate as best as we can, I would say, the volume of calls and emails and appointment requests that we have at this time of year, specifically because the Department of Education is still trickling out some of our abilities to complete some processes that we normally would have had done and completed at this time. We are doing our best to make sure that we can accommodate any question that you have. And certainly there are higher call volume times than others. So lunch is certainly one of our highest volumes. So please be patient with us. I appreciate your patience. But as you need us, we are here for you to help. And without further ado, to help pass the baton on what's coming next, Ruben, take it away.
All righty. Thank you, Tiffany. As Tiffany stated, I am Ruben. I'm with the Student Account Services Office, aka the Billing Office. Yes, I know I'm everyone's favorite person. That's why no one ever talks to me at orientation or anything. But I'm going to go ahead and give you the little insight on billing when it comes to UK. First of all, We get a lot of questions in our office. We get asked, how much do I owe? How do I pay the bill? What are the charges for? And where is my refund? I'm going to try to cover most all of these today and hopefully answer some of those questions that you may have. So first of all, how much do you owe? Well, most of you are probably aware at this point what your tuition rates are, but I have them here on the next slide, and we have the tuition rates for the 24-25 school year. This is the in-state and out-of-state rates. These were approved by the Board of Trustees, I think the end of June. So these were just recently posted, and you will see those on your bill coming out very, very soon. We're working hard on those. Some of you may be checking for that bill every day. We officially bill the first week of August. A little insight, you'll probably see charges on the account probably by this weekend. But you don't actually get the bill till the first week of August. So that way everything will be finalized as far as your aid and things like that. So as far as your tuition goes, we'll get to the next slide and we will look at what all we bill for here in our office. The student account office, we bill for tuition, online learning, any program and course fees, and housing and dining. So the biggest bulk of a bill you're going to get from our office, some of the things we don't bill for would be like fraternity, sorority, parking, things like that. So overall, we bill you for the most of the services that you're going to receive here at UK. Okay, as far as account statements go, like I said, your student is gonna get that account statement around the 1st of August. Let me repeat that again. Your student is gonna get the bill the 1st of August. If they want you to see the bill or if they need to get it to any other party, they will need to forward you that bill. It will be a PDF attachment that goes to the UK student's UK assigned email. We will always email your student to their UK assigned email. We'll get into guest access here in a minute, but just because you have guest access does not mean you'll actually receive the bill. So just keep that in mind. If you want to see the actual bill, a hard copy per se, your student will need to forward that to you. Okay, like I said, bills will go out around August 1st. It will be due August 22nd. If it's not paid by August the 22nd, you do run the risk of getting a late fee, which is 1.5% of any unpaid balance. The balance will be need to be paid in full prior to registering for any future semesters. We will talk about the payment plan here in a second and talk to you about how that works as far as registering late fees, things like that. Installment payment plans. Tiffany kind of touched on this earlier as far as financial aid options. You can set up an installment payment plan that will be available once the bill goes out around August 1st. You can select the installment payment plan for a $50 enrollment fee per semester. It can be up to 4 monthly installments for the fall semester, that is August through November, and the spring is January through April. Also, if you want an installment plan for summer, that will be May through July. So it's 4 months every semester except for summer, and that will be a 3-month term. Now, we do not automatically deduct that payment from your checking or savings account. That is something you will have to sign on and do the payment through your online portal access. So we do not automatically deduct that for you. Here is a copy of an account statement, just a sample here. You may notice in the top right-hand corner, there will be a due date. As I said, that's August 22nd. We will show you what term we're billing for, and any financial aid that we are aware of will be listed on your bill as estimated aid. That may be KEYS money, that may be loans, it may be Pell Grants. Any outside scholarships that we're made aware of will also be listed here as estimated aid. So as long as we're aware of them, which in most cases we will be by the time your bill goes out, it will be listed as estimated aid. When it comes to the total amount due, we will deduct all aid that we're aware of, and your total due will be the remaining balance. In some cases, there may be a negative amount here, or it may say 0. This means that your bill is taken care of with aid as far as we're aware. If something doesn't process as expected, you will get a future bill regarding that. But this is a sample statement that you will receive, or your student will receive around the 1st of August. Okay, if you want to make your student's payment, you can do that online with your guest access to your MyUK portal, or your student can log in and make their payment. The student can give access to anyone they want to help fund their education. So if grandma or grandpa or aunts or uncles want to also pay, they can give them access to log right on and make the payment online. If you use a credit card, it is a 2.25% service fee. And with electronic check, there is no fee at all. So if you want to pay from a checking account, there's no fee whatsoever. You just need to enter your accounting and or your account and routing numbers. Okay, we touched on guest access just a little earlier. As I said, your student, they can give anyone guest access. Once they do that, you will get a link so you can set up your own password, and it will be sent to whatever email address they input for you. And I want to say again, this can go to anyone your student wants to have access. Your student can also determine how much of an access you have, whether it's forever or a week, a month, a semester, however they want it. They can limit your access. They can also limit your access as far as what you see. Whether you see the full balance or all transactions, your student will determine how much access you actually have. Now, I always get the question about from parents, do we actually see the grades through guest access? No, you do not see the grades. So your students are very thankful to hear that. So just know you don't have the access to their grades, only for your money. So move on to the next slide, and we'll be talking about any type of questions you have. So you can put those in the chat, or if you here's my phone number, you can call us directly. And welcome to UK. I'm going to turn it over now to Marianne.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marianne Young. I am the Assistant Vice President for Financial Wellness. And you've already heard from two great resources that we have on campus, fantastic partners and helping folks walk through kind of financing your education part. And so I am just an additional resource that I want to talk about geared towards helping our students. And so if we look at what the Financial Wellness Center has to offer, it's not every campus has a financial wellness center. So I want to talk a little bit about what it is that we do. We have a peer coaching program where students can sit down with another peer and talk about setting goals for their finances. And so it's a really unique program in that sometimes students feel more comfortable asking questions of someone who is in a similar situation as they are in terms of being a student. And so that is one of the services that we offer in the Financial Wellness Center. We do campus outreach activities. So it is not unusual to see us out and about, chatting with students, letting them know about different pieces and parts of information that might be helpful for them to know about, like what is credit, understanding, that first offer that you get when you go get your job, understanding how benefits play into that, understanding kind of the full package. Our goal is to really get out onto campus and meet students where they are to help them build their financial knowledge and education so that they can make informed decisions. And then we are also a great connection to campus resources. So if a student doesn't know where to go, in terms of, hey, I don't know if this is a question for financial aid, or is this a question for student account services, or, oh my gosh, I have this question about this bill. We are also a great connection point that a student can come to us. We can identify that office that is going to be able to assist them, and then get them connected to the right office to be able to answer that question if we're not able to do so within our Financial Wellness Center. As we go through the coaching process as well, we will notice that students may have additional needs in terms of maybe they mentioned that they're struggling in one of their classes, or maybe they mentioned that they're just really experiencing a lot of stress around finances. And so we have additional campus resources outside of the ones that we've kind of showcased today that we will connect students to, just to make sure that they're getting all of the support that they need to be successful while here at UK. And then we are also a supporter of the UK Invest program, and so answer questions and help students through that process as well. Our goal really is thinking about how we help our students thrive while they're with us. So as I mentioned before, we'll talk about goal setting and kind of what goals that individual student may have. We'll talk about budgeting and how a student may organize their budget around their values or their interests. We talk about savings and basic needs and making sure students are getting what they need. And of course, giving information about credit and debt. We talk about off-campus life and helping a student build a budget for what that might look like. Employment, as I mentioned before, when you get that first offer, really thinking about that total package and not just the salary side of things. And then I love talking with students about discounts and all the different resources that are available to them that they can take advantage of here at the university. For instance, going to the Career Center and having your resume reviewed rather than paying for that. It's a benefit that our students already have available to them here. And then I also love to coach students through, there are a lot of retailers that offer discounts to students. And so helping them feel comfortable about how they can do that when they go to purchase an item. And in addition to kind of helping them thrive, we're also going to help them think about how to set goals long term. So it's not just about how do I get through my time here as a student, but really helping students understand that the financial decisions that they make now, how that can impact, the financing that they have available to them in the future, understanding, like credit works and how that can have an impact, the debt that they're taking on, those types of things. I talk a lot about employment offers because we really do want students to be successful as they're leaving the institution and know that they're going to have a lot of opportunities available to them, and we want them to feel confident as they evaluate those offers. And then as part of that UK Invest program as well, we have education and information about investing, as well as things like insurance that can help students in terms of their future planning. And one of the great resources that we use that I really like to highlight, because this is a resource that is available to students that if they're kind of curious and they want to learn a little bit more, but maybe they're not ready to walk in for one of our coaching sessions. On our next slide, we have iGrad. This is a tool that we've been using for several years at the institution, but a student can log in and learn more about a number of topics. Several of them are mentioned here. What I have found the platform is that typically if it's a question that a student has, there is already a quick short lesson that the student can go into, take a look at, learn a little bit more on. I really enjoy the calculators feature of things. So a student can actually go in and build a budget and move numbers around and see how it works. And so some really nice resources available that the student can hop into at any point in time. It's available online. So they don't necessarily have to schedule an appointment, but if they have a burning question at 1 a.m. and they just really need to know how to build that budget, that tool is available to them. But we certainly want them to also feel comfortable coming in and chatting with us. So my last slide has information on how to get in contact with us. We love students, even if they just want to come in and sit and enjoy a quiet moment or just to come and say hi. We would love to have students just stop by. We are here to support them, as our other resources have mentioned. This is a group that's here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out as questions arise or anything we can do to support your student as they navigate UK. Oh, Nancy, you're on mute.
Thank you. You would think after all this time I would know what I was doing here. Apparently not. Well, thank you so much for all of that good information. We have had questions come in as you all have been presenting, and so we'll get to some of those. And again, hope you all will use that Zoom Q&A feature to ask anything you may need to know. And again, realizing that anything that might be more personal or private in nature would encourage you to reach out directly to the office that can assist you, and we can help get you connected if we need to. So I'll let any of you respond to some of the questions that have come in. The first one, and there's another one that's similar to it, ask about tuition increases or thinking ahead to subsequent years. Should they plan on tuition increases for future years? Does it look, are those increases higher for out-of-state students? So who wants to speak to that?
I certainly can give just an average. I know that Ruben, I think we tag teamed who came off mute first, quite frankly. But I would say as a general rule of thumb across the country, and don't get me on a soapbox of whether or not higher education should be a right or a privilege. We'll just go there. But across the country, you're going to see tuition increases every year. That is standard nationally for how institutions operate. Here at UK, we are bound by Kentucky State institutional board who sets a cap on how much public institutions can increase tuition every year. Historically, UK is under that average by quite a bit. So I would say for any family looking at this, anywhere between 1.5% and 3.5% on average as a tuition increase is kind of where we've stayed. And that is as best an answer as I can provide. But I would also say that yes, tuition increases are a standard among institutions of higher education. And UK tends to really evaluate what is possible and necessary before the Board of Trustees makes the determination on what that tuition rate becomes. But any of my colleagues are willing to chime in and debunk me, please feel free.
All right, thank you for that. So here's a question: as for students who have to pay for college on their own and need a little bit more help working through this, trying to figure out what they can do, there's a question: should my daughter come see someone in person? So Tiffany, what would you recommend there?
Yeah, I think there are two things there. So the first thing is going to be, yes, I think it's always a good idea for this to be a phone call or an in-person visit. You know, quite frankly, someone doesn't know what they don't know. And so it's important that this is a conversation and not emails. It's really difficult to make sure that you are answering and quite frankly, active listening to someone with the things that they really have questions about if it's not a conversation. So if coming to campus right now is not the option, then definitely scheduling a phone call with a counselor to walk through next steps and what the options are is my best advice.
Is there any estimated timeline on when departmental aid or further need-based aid may be released?
So in our office, because of the size of our institutions, we are really at the mercy of when departments are able to make those decisions and send us information on who their recipients of those dollars are. So we have soft deadlines for them. We certainly encourage all those departments to have those in place prior to August when billing statements are released. But oftentimes these are faculty committees. And so you have faculty who do a lot of research over the summer that have not always been actively on campus. They've been doing research or writing off campus. And so we are waiting for those committees to review recipients. They do trickle in, but most often that those dollars are done and in place right around or before that first week of school. So it's as Ruben shared earlier, you know, that billing statement on My UK could continue to ebb and flow, and it's as we get those dollars in to that student account, and we post them as quickly as we can as soon as we receive those lists.
Does UK provide any assistance in completing tax forms for on-campus employment?
So I would say two things, because I'm going to read into that question, and Dr. Marianne Young might actually have more information beyond me saying, but there are two things to that question that I think I'm hearing, so I'm going to highlight two pieces. One is on campus, there is a Vista tax clinic. So students actually can have assistance in getting 1040s completed to do their tax returns for free based on that tax clinic. Which is a fantastic service, but that Financial Wellness can certainly connect students with if they need help navigating. The second part of that is what this question might mean is someone going to help them complete an I-9 and understand what those pieces are? So I will also say that UKHR and Student Employment website actually does have definitions of exactly what each of those allocations mean, but iGrad is also an incredible source for that information. A student can actually log into iGrad and type in I-9 in the search box, and it will help them identify whether and what putting 1 means, what putting a 0 means. So we get that question a lot, and those are the two resources. Because no one at UK can help a student complete that form. It's actually part of a legal requirement that we are not able to do that. So we have two very trusted resources in helping students do that.
Tiffany, we were channeling each other because I was going to mention iGrad as a great resource. There's also a newly added module on taxes because we know students have a lot of questions about, you know, where did I live? Because I was in my residence hall, but I still live at home. How does that work? Great resource for your iGrad. And then the VITA Clinic, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant Clinic, is actually done by the the J. David Rosenberg College of Law here on campus. So it is a fantastic resource for students, and encourage them to definitely take advantage of that.
Does UK discuss online scams with students and what to be aware of?
So there are a number of ways that we talk about protecting students with scams. Not only, thinking of the outages that we had earlier, so you'll get information from IT about, don't click on this. This is what to be looking for in terms of a scam email that may come through. But we also offer programming on, being able to protect yourself from fraud as well. So thinking about employment offers that may come through. If you just pay $500, then we can get you to the interview phase. And so trying to help students understand, I call it the spidey sense, to know like, hey, something's not quite right about this. This email address doesn't line up with who I think this should be coming from. This seems like this is too good to be true. Hey, can somebody else take a look at this? So it is something that not just within the financial area, but just in general with protecting your information, you'll get lots of stuff, or the student will get lots of stuff from our IT office, as well as programming that we do throughout in terms of how students can protect themselves.
Ruben, I believe you answered a 529 question in the Q&A, and if folks aren't reading through the Q&A, wanted to give you an opportunity to speak about 529s in case others had that same question as well.
Sure. All 529 plans are set up a little differently. Most of them will have you complete a request for the tuition payment. Most of them will also usually require a copy of your student's account statement. 529, some of them will send a paper check. Some of them will do a automatic bank wire transfer to us. So it depends on the company that you're using, but I did put some information in the chat regarding who you would talk to in our office, but her name is Wendy Christian, and she can give you a lot of different information when it comes to 529. She can help track your 529, things like that. So the student account office, our number is listed several places online, but if you just call and ask for Wendy, we'll get you someone to help you answer those.
Yeah, and Ruben, you mentioned checks. So here's a question. We have a scholarship check, but we won't be in person until after August 22nd. How do you recommend we get a check sent into UK? Don't want it to get lost in the mail. So what do you recommend there?
You can overnight it. That way you have some type of tracking on it. However, if you're not going to be here till after the 22nd, I'm going to tell you, you're not really going to get a late fee until the end of October. So you have a few extra days as a grace period there. So as soon as you get on campus, get that to the financial aid office so they can get it posted to your account, and then we can apply it as a scholarship. So you do have a few extra days with the scholarship goes, but if you want to be sure to see it before you actually get to campus, I would probably overnight it just so you have some tracking information.
Have all of the direct loan notifications through FAFSA been sent to students, or more specifically, will we only receive feedback if we qualify for a loan? My daughter completed FAFSA, but we have not heard anything.
So I will say that any student who completes a FAFSA is an undergraduate student who has a financial aid offer, has a federal loan offer on there as well. You are eligible for federal loan funding as an incoming freshman up to $5,500. The difference to that is going to be whether or not it's a subsidized loan or an unsubsidized loan. So if in that financial aid offer you do not see a federal loan, chances are there may be an issue with whether or not we've received the FAFSA, or if the FAFSA needs components to it completed. And so I would navigate the My UK portal in that financials tab to see if there are any required documents that are highlighted for the student, to first triage to see if we're missing anything or need additional information. But a completed financial aid offer with a FAFSA that we have received should have a federal loan listed on it for a student.
So this question is, some of the aid my student will receive is coming from scholarships from high school. If that doesn't show up, how should we work to get it entered? So how does UK know about some of these outside funding sources?
That is an excellent question, and thank you to the person who brought this up, because I forgot to talk about it in our webinar. So fantastic. That is a requirement by Department of Education regulation that any funding that is earmarked for educational purposes is disclosed to the institution that student is attending, and it is added to the aid package. It's called an estimated financial aid offer, or other financial aid offer, depending on which year we're talking about. That form is actually listed on our website. So on our website, under the Forms tab, you're going to see external or additional scholarships, and it's something called a DARF, which sounds ridiculous, but it's a DARF, a declaration for someone put me on the spot, but it's essentially additional assistance. And that form can be completed and mailed along with that check to our office. Certainly, it can also be brought in by the student at any time, and we can make sure that there are two components to that. One is most often the institutions or entities that are offering those scholarships are nonprofits or are going to write off that educational scholarship as part of their tax return. And so it needs to be added as estimated aid and it added to you and allocated to a financial aid offer so that it can also be appropriately accounted for their tax purposes, which closes the loop in that IRS statute and the Department of Ed Reg. So there is a reason, I promise, and that's it.
For students who were approved for work study, how do they find those work study positions? And the question is the payment applied to the student's account or they receive a paycheck?
Is an excellent question. So in our UK website, our general institutional website, you can actually go to the job search as if you were trying to find a job for a grown adult with or without a degree. And you can actually filter that out by student employment. So you can find on-campus student employment opportunities in the same method you would find an on-campus full-time position. You just filtered out by student jobs. So students can do one of two things. They can search for roles that way, or if they have connections or groups that they're already connected with on campus that they would like to reach out to see if they have student federal work study openings, they can certainly do that as well. But the second part of that question is that is a biweekly paycheck. So that is a paycheck directly to the student that is taxed because it has to be. And so it does not apply directly to their billing statement because we are not a work to earn institution. So it comes as a biweekly paycheck to the student. And as I mentioned, I was a first generation college student and I had an on-campus job and was a college athlete, but I used my on-campus job federal work study position as the way to buy my pizza at 11 o'clock at night so that my family didn't need to know that I was buying a pizza at 11 o'clock at night. So yes, there are pros and cons to that process.
Only other things that I would add, my federal work study job was in the library. I was Mary Ann the librarian, just for fun. Those jobs will have a designation of FWS. So sometimes that's easy to pull through if you're looking for a federal work study position. But the student, if they've never applied for a job before and they would like support in terms of, oh my gosh, they're asking for a resume and I don't have one of those. Oh my gosh, I just want somebody to walk me through this. The Career Services Office, the Stuckert Career Center, is a great resource and can actually do some search strategies with the student to identify options that may align well with what they're thinking about doing professionally. Not a requirement, but again, if you have a student that wants any support with that, highly recommend that they seek the services of the Stuckert Career Center.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a wonderful resource. A follow-up question came up about other part-time positions on campus outside of federal work study. And yes, UK HR student employment, their UK jobs website has student positions, both federal work study and non-federal work study. So check those out there. So we've got a couple of questions about residency and how to establish in-state residency and in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition. So would anybody like to speak to that?
I will say when it comes to residency, the guidelines usually are you have to be in the state of Kentucky for reasons other than school. So what that means is you need to have lived here for a while. I think it's like a year before your residency would be considered. And I noticed someone also put in the chat if they're working as a work study or on campus, would that make them a resident? That answer would be no. Another thing would be is if you purchase property in the state of Kentucky, and you became a resident because of a job transfer or something like that, and that's why your student is here, that could be a reason. But what it really falls back to most of the time is where your student graduated high school. So that's kind of a fallback when we determine residency. But there is a residency office on campus that could answer more of those questions, but that's just the highlights.
Can a student reach out to meet with financial wellness before classes start?
Yes, we would love that. So our student peer coaches will be starting at the beginning of the semester, but we have other folks in the office who are happy to meet with a student before classes start. So if they're interested in that peer coaching, we do have one peer coach over the summer, but we will make sure that that student gets taken care of.
Yeah, with that many other services on campus, they are absolutely available over the summer. Staff are still here and eager to help. Can anyone talk about unsubsidized loans? Do you have to pay those while you're in school? If not, how do you determine how much interest will accrue by the time you're done with college? That is definitely not my area of expertise, so I'm going to let one of you take that.
That is an excellent question. So an unsubsidized loan is something that is identified based on FAFSA information as well as in your financial aid offer. So the Department of Education has no idea what type of scholarships you're receiving from an institution or from an outside entity. They don't know what state grants you may qualify for. And so subsidized versus unsubsidized is completely dependent upon your entire aid package and what you're eligible for. An unsubsidized loan is not based on need. So if you have no remaining unmet need, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes if you can see me, that is a loan that does accrue interest, but does not require repayments until 6 months after the student is no longer enrolled or graduates. So there is that 6-month grace period with all federal student loans. The second part of that question is if you'd like to see what that interest accrual looks like, along with the principal balance, as Dr. Marianne Young shared earlier, you certainly can use iGrad for those tools. That loan repayment calculator helps you identify what that interest will look like. Studentaid.gov also has repayment calculation tools. So you can put in and enter an amount and then get an idea of what that principal and interest will look like over the course of 4 years.
So here's a question related to scholarships. If a non-resident student received a Bluegrass Scholarship and their GPA goes up to a 3.8 after their first semester, will they qualify for a higher scholarship amount for the second semester? Can anyone speak to that?
So academic scholarships are based at the time of completed application to the institution. There are scholarships for continuing students that if you hit a certain threshold of GPA that you may be eligible to receive. Those are not done in the middle of an academic year though. That review happens at the end of an academic year, not in the middle of an academic year. And our scholarship team does a thorough job of reviewing all of those grade and student eligibility requirements to offer those scholarships to anyone that may qualify. That's a great question.
Ruben, here's a question about the installment plan. What are the due dates for each month after they've signed up for it?
Great question. The due date is always the 22nd of the month. Anytime you get a bill from us, it's going to be due the 22nd of the month. So for the fall, you're going to be due August, September, October, and November on the 22nd of each month.
Next question is, do you know when Pell's grant funds and federal loans deposit into the student's account? Should we wait to pay tuition until those have been sent?
We will give you, I assume you're meaning their student account as far as posting against their tuition. We will give you estimated a credit from that from the very first bill. So you will see what you owe with all that, those funds being deducted. So if you still have a balance after that, that's what you need to pay. So you do not need to wait till it officially funds. It will be, we will give you estimated a credit for it.
Tiffany, this next question is asking about the link for the comparison tool for the loan options that you mentioned on the Student Financial Aid website. So if you're able to put that in the chat that everyone can see, that would be helpful. And then we did the Estimate My UK Cost survey. Can you tell me some examples of indirect fees? Books were one, but what are some of the other fees that they should anticipate that maybe they're not thinking about right now?
So I think those would be things I'm going to just answer this in terms of other components of what that cost of attendance really look like. So you're looking at things as a transportation. If a student has a car on campus or lives at home, then there is a Department of Education regulation that allows us to include a transportation cost for gasoline or expenses related to just regular car oil changes and things like that. So transportation can be an indirect cost that is allowable in that cost of attendance line. Obviously, books and supplies are indirect costs. Meal plans are part of a direct charge if you have a meal plan on campus, but if you do not live on campus and you do not have a commuter meal plan, then we have allotted for a meal component to that cost of attendance budget. So there are several layers that are built into that, and our cost of attendance budget is listed in terms of all the components on our website. We are required by regulatory statute to have all components of our cost of attendance budget listed. So it is on our website if you wanted to get an idea of other things that we look at and how those amounts are determined. All the definitions are there as well.
So if a student has extra money from loans, how is that dispersed to them?
Great question. On your Students My UK portal, they can sign up for direct deposit. So that can be any checking account that you want those extra funds to be deposited into. The student can do that on their My UK under financials. And then there's a link for direct deposit, and you just enter your routing and account number. And as soon as those funds you go into a credit status, we will deposit that. We usually do direct deposit 3 times a week during the semester, early semester. After that, it slacks off a little. If your student does not set up a direct deposit, we will eventually cut a paper check and mail it to the permanent address on file, but that does take more time.
So this next question is about a specific scholarship, but for a craft scholarship recipient, when will it show in the student's estimated aid? Is there anything the student needs to do on behalf of UK?
If that scholarship has already been added to that financial aid offer, then it will go along with all the other things that we pushed as estimated aid here this week as we work with our student accountant colleagues to go through that process here. If it's something that we're still waiting to get in terms of it hasn't been listed under that financial aid tab, if you can't see it there listed, then we're still waiting on that roster, and we will certainly offer that to the student as soon as we get that roster. So it could just be a timing issue once you see that.
All right, I see we're coming up on 1 o'clock, but we've got just a couple of questions left, so we'll try to sneak those in before we wrap up. So if a student obtains part-time employment, is that for the entire year or just for the semester, both for federal and non-federal work study?
I think I'm reading that question in terms of part-time employment. If they receive part-time employment at UK, if they go through the process of finding a federal work study position. I want to make sure I understand that question correctly. So please feel free to chat a second part of that if I'm missing. But student federal work positions are for the academic year. And so oftentimes the department would differentiate whether or not when they're hiring a student, we just need this is a set for the term for the semester, or this is the expectation that you would work with us this year in terms of how that department budget is allocated. But most departments have allocated a federal work study position for the academic year.
Got somebody asking about a loss of income appeal. So how does that process work?
So this is one of those processes that in a very typical FAFSA year would have already been done. If you've sent us all that documentation and we've been able to review it, the Department of Education is trickling out the ability for institutions to be able to make these kinds of corrections. We were actually told that we were going to start being able to do that in late June. That became early July, and then that became middle to end of July. So we are doing our best to ensure that we're collecting the documentation that we know that we need, and then prioritizing processes that we can do now and things that we cannot do now because they've not given us access. And that's not just specific to UK, that's nationally. So I'm sorry that that seems to be the scenario that we're in right now, and that you need some information from us, but I promise that we're doing our best to try to make sure that we're doing them as quickly as we can. The Department of Education just released about 2 weeks ago our ability to actually complete verification processes. So we are, it's become a bottleneck that unfortunately UK didn't create, but we're doing our best to make sure that we're providing that information to families as we get it.
So for students who are trying to start building credit, the question is, does UK Invest have a credit card available to assist with this?
So UK Invest does not include that credit card component, but if a student is interested in learning about credit, we'd love to see them in the Financial Wellness Center so we can talk about that and walk them through that.
And then here's a question that I have not seen before, so I don't know the answer to this. Are there shredders on campus if somebody needs to dispose of confidential info? I know I've seen the recycling bins that are marked for confidential documents, but don't know if I've seen shredders that everybody has access to.
I'm not sure on that one. I'm not sure if they have them in the residence hall. I know that some financial institutions will include the option of being able to take things to that bank or that credit union to be able to have things shredded. I know there's a couple different things throughout the hospital and things that we work with student records, but I'm not sure if it's available to students because most of those are behind lock and key in terms of office space. But that's a great question. We'll have to dig into that more.
Yeah, Marianne, that's a good thought that maybe stopping by the UK Federal Credit Union in the Gatton Student Center, that they might be able to assist with that, or maybe even the PNC and the Student Center. That would be a first place to look for sure.
I know that we also have the RICO printing and copying service for students, and I know that they have large shredding capacity containers. So I wonder if that's a service that they might offer to students as well if they needed to dispose of confidential information.
Yeah, that's a good thought as well, Tiffany. So one last question, and then we'll wrap up. This person says, so far we've only submitted the short survey. I'm not entirely sure which survey that is. And it says, we were told at orientation that someone would reach out to us. How do I make sure we are on your radar? Does anybody know what survey that may be, or maybe you can provide a quick clarification in the Q&A? I want to make sure I understand what office they're hoping to connect with too, regarding loss of income. Okay, thanks for that clarification.
So, okay, so that is, if you had that unusual circumstance, that was a quick survey that was on the My UK portal that we had populated that survey out there. And once we get those responses, then we're trying to vet out what process it is we need to do next. And quite frankly, if it's a process that we know that we cannot do for a family yet, if we haven't been given access to be able to make those corrections, then chances are my team has not yet reached out to say, here's the documentation that we need, because we don't want you to start compiling that and sending it in, and then we just sit on it, because that's a lot of confidential information and documentation for a family to send our way if we can't do anything with it yet. So please stay tuned, because those responses are being tallied and calculated. And as soon as we know we can make that kind of change on your behalf, then we will request documentation. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for all of this good information, and we got some great questions, and I'm so glad that you all had an opportunity to answer those here. Again, if you have any questions that you think of after the fact or anything you want additional clarification on, please do reach out to the Office of Student Financial Aid and Scholarships, or to Student Account Services, or to our Financial Wellness Center. And again, if you need help navigating anything related to UK, you can always reach out to Parent and Family Engagement by emailing parents@uky.edu. Thanks so much for your time today. We hope you'll join us for future Cat Chat Lives, and we hope you found this helpful today. Thanks so much, and go Cats.